I want to talk about a problem we have. It's a big divide. Now, I'm not talking about Democrats and Republicans. I'm not even talking about blue bombers and tie cats. I'm talking about the big divide between those that love social entrepreneurship and those that are confused. And to address this, there's a few questions that we have to look at. First, what is the definition of social entrepreneurship? Is social entrepreneurship really a new phenomenon? Is a corporation an appropriate vehicle for social change? And in fact, what is the purpose of a business corporation? Is the purpose of a business corporation changing? And what does that mean for capitalism? And is capitalism under threat? And I say under threat because of the changing purpose of the business corporation. Because you might find this surprising. As the dean of the business school, I spent a lot of time downtown. And there's a lot of people who feel threatened by the prospect of social entrepreneurship. And my thesis is they don't understand it. And I'm going to try and help explain the connection between these things. So in fact, this is what you see. Big business is beginning to accept broader social responsibilities, mocking the whole idea of business people in suits helping the elderly and picking up garbage and so on and so forth from The Economist. I mean, I was so actually taken aback because The Economist is a magazine I've been reading since I first got into business. And it's really caused me to think, why do they have this misconception? Why do they think that social entrepreneurship is something to be mocked? So I started doing a little bit of research. That's what we do. And I started with the definition of social entrepreneurship. And frankly, out of all the definitions, reading all the academic journals, my favorite is still the Trickle Foundation, which simply says social entrepreneurship uses business models, selling products or services to solve social problems. How simple is that? Let's take what we've learned from business and apply it to solving social problems. So I love that. That's great. Does that really start a new era? Well, I'm not sure. And why do people think that the business corporation purpose might be changing? Well, I think it's partly because this August, there was really something significant happened, which is a group called the Business Roundtable in the US. The Business Roundtable is made up of 181 of the largest corporations in the world. It includes Amazon, it includes Apple, so on and so forth. And this is from their press release on August 19th, that they said the Business Roundtable redefines the purpose of a corporation to promote an economy that serves all Americans. Updated statement moves away from shareholder primacy, includes a commitment to all stakeholders. And here's a little more detail of what they talked about. So breaking that down, this is right out of their statement. While each of our individual companies serves its own corporate purpose, we share a fundamental commitment to all of our stakeholders, which includes 1, delivering value to our customers, 2, investing in our employees, 3, dealing fairly and ethically with our suppliers, 4, supporting the communities in which we work, and 5, generating long-term value for our shareholders. Now, I look at somebody like Wayne Chu, and he says, this is no revelation. I've been doing this for years. But it is great that the large corporations in the US are seeing this and actually putting it down on paper. And you might ask yourself, why do they feel the need to do this? And why do they call it redefining the purpose? Well, this is a reason why. Back in the 1970s, the Chicago School of Economics, led by Milton Friedman, who's pictured here, said very plainly that the purpose of the corporation is to make money for shareholders, full stop. And that the purpose of government is to protect people and planet. So when you think about it, what he's saying is everybody's got their role in a society, and you stick in your spot. And if the government does a poor job of setting its guidelines for what polluters are supposed to do, that's not the business corporation's problem. That's the government's problem. Business corporation, just go and do what you're supposed to do, and life goes on. In fact, he even said that there is no moral content in business decisions. This became a bit of a truth. It's been a truth for almost 50 years now. It's been such a truth that the Business Roundtable felt that they had to actually identify that they were redefining the purpose of the corporation. And you might say, how does this, I'm going to be bold here and say, how does this sociopathic mindset take over so well? Well, here's how, there's two reasons. Number one is because it was founded on Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations book, where he talked about the importance of self-interest to drive economies. And some of you might have seen a more modern play on this in, I have to admit, guilty pleasure, one of my favorite movies, Wall Street, when Michael Douglas gets up and gives his big speech about the importance of greed, and that greed drives the economy. And Milton Friedman felt that very much that's what Adam Smith was talking about. And how can you argue with this? This is the gross domestic product per capita in the US from 1950 to 2015. It's the kind of growth chart that we all want in any business we're doing, social enterprise, pure profit enterprise, it doesn't matter. It's just going up, and it looks great. And I think most people, most business leaders looked at this and said, I don't want to mess with this. This looks pretty good, Milton is getting a lot of favor, and the economy's going up like crazy. This is a good thing. But if you put on top of this, so the red line is that line that you were looking at. It's a little shorter time frame from 1985, still going up. But the blue one is actually real gross domestic, the blue one actually is real median household income over that same time period. You see it's quite flat. And this is developing the thing of the 1% and the uber wealthy and the distinction between classes. And here you're seeing it. And you get work like Thomas Piketty and so on and so forth talking about some of the challenges that we're getting with the split in income. So you could say that what Milton talked about really drove our economy, but you could also say it drove it well for some, but not for all. But I don't actually say either of those things. What I say is it's kind of an accident of timing. Milton Friedman came along at a time when it was already taking off. And why was it taking off? Simply because economic expansion is driven by innovation. It's not driven by sociopathic tendencies or your specific models. It's driven by innovation. And primarily, it's driven by something called general purpose technologies. General purpose technologies are pervasive technologies that provide an inventive platform that will interrupt and accelerate the normal march of economic progress. You're all sitting there and thinking, okay, we got a bunch of academic words. What the heck does that mean? Well, let me show you an example. The wheel. The wheel invented, they think, by the Mesopotamians in around 3500 BC. Interesting story. What I found was that it was actually, the wheel was originally a horizontal wheel because, hey, you need something to eat your food out of, so it was good for pottery. And it actually took hundreds of years before people thought, wait a minute, we can tie two of these together and we've got a mode of transportation. But clearly, that is a technology that interrupted and accelerated the march of economic progress. Another one is a printing press. If we wouldn't have had the printing press, a lot of what happened in the Renaissance period wouldn't have happened, wouldn't have been shared, wouldn't have evolved to where we are today. These are general purpose technologies. The Industrial Revolution was driven by two, actually multiple, but here's two examples. The big one being the steam engine in 1775, which changed modes of productivity significantly. Well, here's something that people don't think much about, but there were three major general purpose technologies that happened within 3 years in the late 1800s. Anybody want to take a stab at what some of them might have been? The automobile, good. The internal combustion engine, not electricity, but the light bulb and the telephone. So these were all invented in the 1870s. And what did that do for our economy? Remember the chart that was going up? Well, this is a similar chart that's going up, and it is adoption of those three technologies. And the light bulb, put it in terms of electrical distribution to homes. So that's the first dotted line. The solid line is the telephone adoption, which you'll notice never quite hit 100% because we switched from landlines. And then the dashed line is the automobile. And just a little trick question, there's a bit of a kink in that curve. Do people know, you want to take a guess at what that is, where the automobile dropped off for a bit? World War, very good. These general purpose technologies you think are a big change, but when you realize the ramification and the complementary innovations that happen, so you have the light bulb invented, which means it makes sense to do electric distribution everywhere. Once you have the electric distribution, it makes sense to have home heating and to have appliances invented and entertainment and comfort items and security and so on and so forth. When you think about the internal combustion engine and somebody turns it into an automobile, well, to build the automobiles, you need the rubber, you need the metal, you need the fabric, so on and so forth. And then where do you take the automobile? You need highways to be built all over, bridges, so on and so forth. And you have to fuel these automobiles. So you need distribution of pipelines and gas stations, so on and so forth. So you can see how that adoption through that period drove the 20th century. And by the way, this is why Donald Trump talks about making America great again, because it was great with all of that complementary innovation happening and all that growth during that period. We had another little jump in the latter part of the 20th century because of the computer revolution, but it didn't generate the same kind of employment as what we had through this group. So I maintain that Milton Friedman was just lucky in the right place, the right time. And what really drove growth during the 20th century was the innovations from the 19th century. Now, if we want to look at Adam Smith's work in a more comprehensive way, Professor Patricia Werheim, she said, look, Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, but that's not all he wrote. He also wrote The Theory of Moral Sentiments, and he wrote lectures on jurisprudence. And what she said was the prevailing managerist preoccupation with shareholder value is challenged, if not completely refuted, by taking seriously the social character of Smith's complex vision of commerce. In other words, what she said is he had a series of 3 books, 2 of which talked about the importance of being social as a corporation and what you're contributing. So she said, it's not a question of self-interest or benevolence with Smith. It's self-interest and benevolence. And her argument was just to take the one book and say that Adam Smith was all about the corporation only focusing on profit and the shareholder is a misreading of Adam Smith. In other words, we've had 350 years since Adam Smith, and we've allowed the last 50 years to be kicked out of trajectory by the work of the Chicago School, and we think that that is tradition and that's history. It's not. Real history is the social importance of a corporation. Okay, I think we're at the audience participation part. I need to ask you all to participate. How many see a duck in this photo? How many see a rabbit in this photo? Yeah. Do you see them both now? This was a diagram used by Thomas Kuhn in his book, Structure of Scientific Revolution. And what he was showing, you can look at one phenomenon and see two different perspectives at the same time. And if you kind of maybe take this might be a bit of a stretch, but I look at it in terms of, interestingly enough, Friedman versus Friedman. Milton Friedman on one side, on self-interest, and Ed Friedman. This is a bit of a commercial because I wanted to give a heads up. In February, Ed Friedman's going to be here at the Haskayne School of Business. He's the father of stakeholder theory, and he is a true believer in the idea of what the Business Roundtable calls the redefined purpose of the business corporation. But this is not new. Like if you look before Milton Friedman, Henry Ford's main philosophy was, I need to be able to pay my employees enough that they can buy my cars. So he paid way more than all of his competitors and put all his money into production and into mechanisms so that, and high volume, so that he could drive the economy that way. The fellow on the other side, Jim Sinegal, most of you won't recognize him, but he was a founder of Costco. And Costco, similar thing. Walmart, really hard on labor. Costco comes along and says, no, we're full health benefits and a higher wage for all of our people. So this is not a new idea. Company towns, think of company towns. In 1905, Hershey built their plant and then the entire town of Hershey, Pennsylvania, which means the town is responsible for building the hospital, the schools, the parks, and so on. Now we've got Google, Facebook talking about building housing and their own amenities. So I'm just trying to make the point that this is not really a new phenomenon. We need to embrace it. We need to get behind it. We need to fully drive social entrepreneurship. But we need to make it clear to people who feel this is some kind of threat or somehow out of line that no, this is completely natural. It fits with what's been happening from the start of the corporation, from the start of the Industrial Revolution, and we embrace it. We love it. We think it's important for our future. So, I thought I'd just put in here what some leading school deans, business school deans are saying. So we need our students to be thoughtful about the role of business in society. At Harvard, students want the place of work to reflect purpose and values. Corporations, their leaders and owners need to act to restore trust, from Stanford. And we are being disrupted left, right, and center, talking about the whole social entrepreneurship movement. All of this, which means that we're so proud to be connected with the Trico Foundation, and it's really a big step forward, an important step that we're very proud of. So when you see this now, you'll see both sides of the equation. They come together. It is important to cover all stakeholders, not just the shareholders, but the customers, the community, the suppliers, and I'm missing one. Employees. Oh, thank you. So embrace social entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for coming to this event and supporting us. And I'll hand it back to Kathy. Thank you.